They said a woman could never become king. They called her cursed, a child of bad destiny, unworthy to sit on the sacred throne of her ancestors. When her father the king grew weak, greedy men rose against the royal family. They slaughtered loyal warriors, hunted down members of her household, and seized the throne with violence. The young princess Susuka was captured, thrown into a dark prison, and left to slowly die simply because she was a woman born to rule. They believed her story had ended. But destiny has a strange way of rising from the ashes. Against all odds, Susuka survived the cruelty meant to destroy her. Hidden in the wilderness, she trained like a warrior, growing stronger in body and spirit. When the time finally came, she returned, not as a frightened princess, but as a fearless fighter ready to challenge the tyrant who stole her kingdom and restore hope to her suffering people. Long ago, in a vast and powerful kingdom surrounded by thick forests and wide rivers, there ruled a respected king named King Tachi. For many years he had ruled the people with wisdom and fairness. His voice carried authority, and when he spoke, even the stubborn chiefs listened. Under his rule, the farms were green, the rivers were safe for fishing, and traders from distant lands filled the markets with salt, cloth, and gold. The kingdom was peaceful, but time is something even the greatest king cannot defeat. King Tachi had grown very old. His beard had turned white like the morning mist that covered the river at dawn. The strength that once carried him through wars and long journeys had slowly left his body. King Tachi sat on the royal stool, his tired eyes studying the men before him. An old chief slowly rose from his seat. His voice was respectful, but his words carried deep concern. "My king," he said softly, bowing his head, "you have ruled us well for many years. Our kingdom has known peace because of your wisdom." The king nodded slowly. The chief continued, "But the kingdom must begin to think about the future." The words hung in the air like a heavy cloud. For a moment, no one spoke. King Tachi closed his eyes. He already knew the truth. "I know," he finally replied in a weak voice. The chiefs looked at each other. Everyone understood the painful problem. The king had only one child, his daughter, Princess Susuka. Susuka was only 18 years old. But despite her young age, she was known throughout the kingdom for her intelligence and kindness. She listened carefully when elders spoke, and she treated the poorest villagers with the same respect she showed to chiefs. Sometimes she would secretly walk through the markets, speaking with farmers and traders. She wanted to understand her people, and many people loved her. But there was a problem, a very dangerous problem. In that kingdom, it was a sacred taboo for a woman to sit on the throne. The laws of the ancestors were clear. Only a man from the royal bloodline could rule. And there was another clan inside the kingdom that had waited many years for their chance. They were powerful, they were proud, and they believed the throne belonged to them. While King Tachi grew weaker with each passing day, whispers began spreading across the villages. The king will soon die. The throne will become empty. The other clan will take power. Some people feared what would happen. Others quietly hoped for change. But unknown to the people, the spirits of the land were already watching, and destiny had already begun to move. In the old days, before any king made an important decision, he would seek guidance from the fetish priest. The priest was not just a spiritual leader. He was believed to be the voice of the gods themselves. Whatever message he delivered was treated as sacred truth. In that kingdom, the most respected spiritual man was Nana Ampabeng. He lived deep inside the sacred forest, where ancient shrines stood beneath giant trees older than memory. The place was feared and respected. No ordinary person dared to enter without permission. People believed powerful spirits guarded the grove. One night, when the moon was hidden behind thick clouds, Nana Ampabeng entered a deep spiritual trance. The shrine drums echoed softly through the forest. Boom, boom, boom. The priest lay on the cold earth as thick incense smoke curled into the air. The night grew strangely quiet. Even the insects stopped making noise. Suddenly, Nana Ampabeng's body began to tremble. His eyes rolled back. The spirits had come. In his vision, he saw something terrifying. The kingdom was burning. Villages were in flames. Warriors were fighting each other in the streets. Children were crying. Women were running with fear. The royal palace collapsed into dust. The sacred royal stool was broken. The priest screamed in fear. Then a powerful voice spoke from the darkness. It sounded like thunder rolling across the sky. If the throne passes to the other clan, the kingdom will fall apart. Nana Ampabeng shook violently. Sweat covered his body. Then the vision changed. The flames disappeared. The crying stopped. The priest saw the royal palace standing proudly again. He saw the rivers flowing peacefully. He saw the markets full of laughter. Then he saw Princess Susuka sitting on the royal stool. She wore the crown of the kingdom. The people surrounded her, cheering with joy. The mysterious voice spoke again. Susuka is the chosen ruler. When the king dies, the throne must belong to her. The priest collapsed. When Nana Ampabeng finally woke up, his entire body was shaking. He knew the message he had received would shake the entire kingdom. But the words of the gods could never be hidden. A few weeks later, the kingdom celebrated the great traditional festival. It was the largest gathering of the year. People traveled from every village. Drums thundered across the palace grounds. Dancers moved with energy. Warriors displayed their strength. Chiefs sat proudly in their colorful cloth. Then Nana Ampabeng slowly stepped forward. The crowd began to grow quiet. Even the drums stopped. The old priest lifted his sacred staff. "The gods have spoken," he announced. His voice echoed across the courtyard. Everyone leaned forward to hear. "When King Tachi leaves this world, the throne must pass to Princess Susuka." For a moment, the entire kingdom froze. Then the crowd exploded with noise. Some people shouted with joy, others looked shocked. But from one corner of the gathering came angry voices. The rival clan stood up in fury. One of their warriors slammed his spear into the ground. "This is impossible," he shouted. "A woman cannot rule us." Another chief shouted angrily, "The priest has been deceived. The gods would never choose a woman." The peaceful festival suddenly turned into chaos. Warriors began shouting. Chiefs argued loudly. Fear spread across the palace courtyard, and in the shadows of the crowd, the rival clan began whispering dangerous plans. Because in their hearts, they had already made a decision. If the kingdom tried to place Susuka on the throne, then war would begin. And before the sun rose again, the blood of the kingdom might be spilled. The priest must be lying. The gods would never choose a woman. But deep down, their anger was not really about tradition. They wanted power. They had waited for years to control the throne, and now a young woman stood in their way. Secret meetings began in dark rooms. Warriors sharpened their spears. Spiritual priests from the rival clan performed rituals to strengthen their fighters. In those days, warriors did not rely only on weapons. They were fortified spiritually. Their bodies were covered with protective charms. Their spirits were hardened by rituals. Meanwhile, inside the palace, King Tachi felt a heavy burden on his heart. One evening, he called his most trusted warrior. Atinga, a giant man, stepped forward. Atinga was not born in that kingdom. He came from the northern lands, where warriors were trained from childhood. His shoulders were wide like a mountain. His voice was deep and calm. "My king," Atinga said, bowing. King Tachi looked at him seriously. "If anything happens, you must protect Susuka." Atinga placed his fist on his chest. "I will protect her with my life." But destiny was already rushing toward them like a storm. The attack came suddenly. Under the cover of darkness, the rival clan marched toward the palace with hundreds of warriors. Their war horns echoed through the night. Boom! Boom! palace guards rushed to defend the gates. Swords clashed, spears flew. War cries filled the air. The rival warriors were stronger and more prepared. They had powerful spiritual protection. One by one, the king's soldiers began to fall. Inside the palace, chaos erupted. Atinga fought like a lion. He swung his sword with terrifying strength, knocking enemies to the ground, but there were too many of them. Soon the palace courtyard was filled with wounded warriors. King Tachi sat inside the royal chamber, breathing heavily. Blood and dust filled the air. Atinga rushed inside. "My king, we must escape!" The old king shook his head slowly. "No." His voice was calm. "My time has come." Atinga looked shocked. "But Susuka!" The king grabbed Atinga's arm. "Forget me. Save my daughter." Atinga ran quickly toward the princess's residence. But when he reached the room, his heart froze. The door was broken. The room was empty. Opposition warriors had already captured Princess Susuka. Atinga dropped to his knees. "I have failed." The palace soon fell completely. The rival clan took control. Their warriors searched everywhere for Atinga. They feared him more than any other fighter. "He must be found," their leader ordered. "If he lives, he will return." But Atinga had already escaped into the forest. He moved silently through the darkness. His heart was heavy with guilt. He could not save the king. He could not save Susuka. Tears ran down the face of the giant warrior. "I failed them." But deep inside, another voice spoke. "You must live. You must return." The rival clan sent hunters across the land. Atinga must die. The forest was dark and silent as Atinga moved through the thick trees. The moon hid behind heavy clouds, and only the faint light of the stars guided his steps. Blood still flowed slowly from the wound on his side, but the giant warrior did not stop. Pain meant nothing to him now. Only one thought burned inside his heart. Susuka must live. As he moved deeper into the forest, sudden movement appeared ahead of him. 3 armed warriors stepped out from behind the trees. Their spears glinted in the weak moonlight. They were men from the rival clan. One of them pointed his spear toward Atinga. "There he is," the warrior said. "The king's dog." Another man laughed coldly. "Our leader said you must not leave this forest alive." Atinga slowly raised his sword. His breathing was calm. "You should move aside," he warned quietly. The warriors laughed. "You are wounded," one of them said. "You will die easily tonight." But before the last word finished leaving his mouth, Atinga moved. His body exploded with speed. His sword flashed through the darkness like lightning. The first warrior barely had time to raise his spear before the blade struck his chest. He collapsed instantly. The second attacker charged with a shout, but Atinga turned and struck him with a powerful swing that sent him crashing into the ground. The third warrior dropped his spear in terror. He fell to his knees immediately. "Please!" he cried, raising his hands. "Spare me!" Atinga stopped. His sword hovered near the man's throat. "Speak," Atinga growled. The terrified warrior trembled. "The princess is alive," he said quickly. Atinga's eyes sharpened. "Where is she?" "They have taken her to the rival clan's stronghold," the man said nervously. "Our leader wants to keep her alive." "Why?" Atinga demanded. The warrior swallowed hard. "They are waiting for you." Atinga frowned. "For me?" "Yes," the man replied. "They believe you will try to rescue her. When you come, they will capture you." The giant warrior's jaw tightened. "They want the strongest warrior of the palace imprisoned, so no one can defend her." Atinga slowly lowered his sword. The man looked up with hope. "Please, I have told you the truth." Atinga stepped back. "Run," he said. The terrified warrior did not wait. He scrambled to his feet and disappeared into the forest. Atinga stood silently for a moment. Then he turned and began moving quickly toward the direction of the rival clan's territory. But after only a short distance, a strange voice suddenly echoed through the forest. "Atinga?" The warrior stopped. He looked around carefully. From between the giant trees, a tall figure slowly stepped forward. It was Nana Ampabeng, the fetish priest. The old priest's body was covered in sacred white clay markings. Around his neck hung several powerful charms. The air around him felt heavy with spiritual energy. "Atinga," the priest repeated calmly. The warrior bowed his head respectfully. "Great priest." Nana Ampabeng studied him quietly. "You are rushing toward danger." "I must save the princess," Atinga replied firmly. The priest shook his head slowly. "It is already too late for that." Atinga's eyes flashed with confusion. "What do you mean?" "If you go to the stronghold now," Nana Ampabeng said quietly, "you will be captured before reaching her." Atinga clenched his fists. "I am not afraid of them." "This is not about fear," the priest replied. "It is about destiny." The forest wind rustled softly through the leaves above them. The priest stepped closer. "The gods have shown me what will happen if you go tonight." Atinga remained silent. "You will fight bravely," the priest continued, "but their traps are already waiting." The warrior's breathing grew heavy. "They will kill you, and the princess will have no protector." Atinga looked down at the ground. For the first time that night, doubt touched his heart. The priest reached into a small leather pouch and removed several sacred charms. "These will strengthen your spirit," he said. He tied them carefully around Atinga's arm. As the charms touched his skin, a strange warmth moved through the warrior's body. "You must leave this land for now," Nana Ampabeng continued. Atinga looked shocked. "Leave?" "Yes." The priest's voice was firm. "Go far away where no one will find you." "But the princess will live," the priest interrupted. Atinga looked confused. "The rival clan will not kill her yet," Nana Ampabeng said. "They need her alive to control the kingdom." The priest stepped back. "Time will come when you must return." Atinga looked deeply troubled. "I promised the king I would protect her." "You still will," the priest said gently. "But not tonight." After a long silence, Atinga slowly nodded. Then he turned and disappeared deeper into the forest. Nana Ampabeng watched him go. Then the priest turned toward the kingdom. He began walking quickly. Inside the rival clan's stronghold, Princess Susuka sat inside a guarded room. Her hands were tied. Two warriors stood outside the door. In the main hall of the compound, the rebel leader Nana Entim sat proudly on a large chair. Warriors filled the room. They were celebrating their victory. Suddenly the doors opened. Nana Ampabeng walked inside. The room fell silent. Some warriors looked uneasy. The old priest's presence commanded respect. Nana Entim frowned. "Why are you here?" he asked coldly. The priest stood tall. "I have come with a warning." Murmurs spread across the room. "If you kill Princess Susuka," Nana Ampabeng said firmly, "this kingdom will fall into destruction." The rebel warriors began whispering. "But if you release her, peace can still return." Nana Entim suddenly laughed loudly. "You dare come here to tell us such nonsense?" His eyes filled with anger. "You think we fear your stories about the gods?" He pointed toward one of his guards. "Kill him." The guard stepped forward with his sword, but Nana Ampabeng did not move. Instead, he looked calmly at the approaching warrior. "If you touch me," the priest said quietly, "you will go blind." The guard hesitated, but Nana Entim shouted angrily, "Strike him down!" The guard lifted his sword and rushed forward. But before the blade could reach the priest, the guard suddenly screamed. His sword dropped from his hand. He grabbed his face in terror. "I cannot see!" he cried. The warrior collapsed to the ground, shaking. "I am blind!" Fear exploded across the room. Even the bravest warriors stepped back. Nana Ampabeng stood calmly in the center of the hall. His voice echoed through the silence. "The gods are watching." Fear filled the rebel hall after the guard suddenly lost his sight. The once fearless warriors who had been shouting moments earlier now stepped back slowly. The blind guard rolled on the ground, crying loudly, his hands covering his eyes. "I cannot see!" he screamed again and again. Darkness. Everything is darkness. Even the proud warriors of Nanantim felt their hearts tremble. The room that had been full of laughter suddenly became silent. All eyes turned toward Nana Ampabeng, the old fetish priest who stood calmly in the center of the hall. The sacred charms around his neck gently touched each other as he breathed slowly. The guard continued crying, "My eyes! Please help me!" Finally, several warriors rushed forward and knelt before the priest. "Forgive us," one of them pleaded. "We did not know the gods were truly behind you." Another warrior bowed his head to the ground. "Please heal him." Nana Ampabeng looked at the blind guard lying helpless on the floor. His face softened with compassion. "The gods do not enjoy punishment," the priest said quietly. "They only defend what is sacred." He knelt beside the trembling guard and placed his palm gently over the man's eyes. Then he whispered ancient spiritual words passed down from the ancestors. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the guard suddenly gasped. "My eyes." Slowly, he opened them. "I can see!" The entire hall erupted in shock. The guard fell at the priest's feet, crying with gratitude. "You have saved me!" But Nana Ampabeng slowly raised his hand for silence. "Listen carefully," he said firmly. His voice carried deep authority. "Whoever kills Princess Susuka will destroy this kingdom." The words echoed across the hall like thunder. Some of the warriors looked terrified. Others glanced nervously toward their leader. But Nanantim remained seated. His face showed neither fear nor respect. After a long moment, he stood up slowly. "You speak boldly, old man," he said coldly, "but I am not afraid of your threats." He walked toward the priest and looked directly into his eyes. "However, I will not kill the princess." The warriors looked confused. Nanantim continued, "She will remain alive." His lips curved slightly into a cold smile. "But she will remain in prison. Let destiny decide her fate." And so Princess Susuka was locked away inside a dark prison deep within the rebel stronghold. Days passed. Weeks passed. Months passed. The kingdom that once knew peace slowly fell into darkness. Under Nanantim's rule, the people began to suffer. Taxes were increased heavily. Farmers were forced to surrender most of their harvest. Traders were beaten if they refused to pay. Many chiefs who questioned the new ruler were imprisoned. Some were even executed. Fear spread across the villages. The markets grew quiet. Songs disappeared from the streets. Families whispered in their homes at night. Meanwhile, inside the cold prison walls, Princess Susuka slowly faded. The young woman who had once walked proudly through the palace gardens now sat alone in darkness. Her hands were chained. The small prison window allowed only a thin line of sunlight each day. Sometimes she closed her eyes and whispered prayers. "Father, I hope your spirit is watching." Days turned into months. Months turned into years. For 2 long years, Susuka remained locked away. But even as Nanantim ruled the kingdom with power, peace never entered his life. At first he ignored the warnings of the priest, but soon strange things began happening. Every night he struggled to sleep. When he closed his eyes, he saw disturbing visions, burning villages, crying children, a throne covered in blood. He would wake up suddenly in the middle of the night, sweating and breathing heavily. Night after night this continued. For weeks, Nanantim could not sleep. His mind felt restless. His body felt weak. His temper grew worse. Finally, the troubled ruler called his advisors. "Bring another fetish priest," he ordered angrily. "Find out what is happening to me." Soon, a powerful spiritual priest from another land was brought before him. The man studied Ananse carefully. Then he performed several rituals, throwing sacred bones onto the ground and reading the signs carefully. After a long silence, the priest lifted his head. "The gods are angry," he said. The room fell silent. "Angry?" Ananse asked coldly. "Yes." The priest's voice remained calm. "You are holding the chosen ruler of the kingdom in chains." Ananse's face tightened. The priest continued, "The spirits will not give you peace until she is released." The rebel leader clenched his fists. "And if I refuse?" he asked. The priest looked at him steadily. "Then you will never sleep again. Your mind will slowly break." For the first time since taking power, Ananse felt fear rise inside his chest. Days passed. Still he could not sleep. Every night the visions returned. Every night his head pounded with pain. Finally, exhausted and bitter, Ananse made his decision. "Release her," he ordered angrily. The guards looked surprised. "But let her go far away. I never want to see her again." And just like that, after 2 years of suffering, Princess Susuka was taken out of the prison. But the young woman who stepped outside the gates was no longer the strong princess she once was. She was weak, thin, barely able to walk. The guards pushed her out of the stronghold and left her in the wilderness. No food, no protection, only the open forest. She walked slowly through the trees, struggling to keep her balance. Her body could barely carry her weight. After hours of wandering, she collapsed on the forest floor. The princess who had once been chosen by the gods now lay unconscious, close to death. Far away in the sacred grove, Ananse sat quietly beside the shrine. Suddenly, his body trembled. The spirits had spoken again. "The princess has been released." The priest immediately closed his eyes and entered a deep spiritual trance. Using the ancient powers given to him by the gods, he searched through the spiritual world for her presence. Moments passed. Then he saw her, lying alone in the forest, unconscious, barely alive. The priest opened his eyes quickly. Without wasting a moment, he grabbed his staff and rushed into the forest. After hours of searching, he finally found her. Princess Susuka lay beneath a large tree, her breathing weak and slow. The priest quickly knelt beside her. "My child," he whispered. He gently placed his hand on her forehead and began chanting ancient healing words. Slowly, life returned to her body. Her breathing grew stronger. Ananse carefully carried her to a nearby village where kind villagers helped him care for her. They gave her warm food. They treated her wounds. Days passed. Her strength slowly returned. The princess who had suffered in darkness was finally beginning to heal. But far away, hidden in the wilderness, a warrior named Ananse was still waiting. Not far from the village, inside the sacred grove, Ananse had begun another spiritual search. He sat before the shrine, his staff planted firmly into the earth. Smoke from burning herbs curled into the still air. The priest closed his eyes. His body slowly trembled as he entered a deep trance. The spirits of the land whispered to him, and they showed him something important. Far away in the wilderness, hidden among the mountains and tall grasses, lived a powerful warrior, a man who had once sworn to protect the princess, Ananse. When the priest opened his eyes, he immediately stood up. "The time has come," he whispered. Days later, after traveling through thick forests and rocky paths, Ananse finally found the warrior. Ananse stood beside a river sharpening his sword. His body had become even stronger during his time in hiding. His wounds had healed, but the sadness in his eyes remained. When he saw the priest approaching, he quickly stood and bowed respectfully. "Great priest," Ananse said. Ananse looked at him quietly. "The princess lives," the priest said. Atinga's eyes widened. "She is alive." "Yes." Relief flooded through the warrior like cool water. "Where is she?" he asked quickly. "She is healing in a nearby village," the priest replied. Atinga lowered his head in gratitude. "The gods have not abandoned her." The priest then looked at him seriously. "But your duty is not finished." Atinga raised his head. "What must I do?" Nana Ampabeng reached into a leather pouch and brought out a small calabash containing a dark herbal mixture. "This is a sacred concoction prepared by the spirits of the land," he said. "This will awaken the power inside her." The priest's voice became deeper. "Once she drinks this, no man on earth will defeat her in battle." Atinga looked surprised. "The gods themselves will guide her hands," the priest continued. "She will carry the strength of the ancestors." The warrior remained silent, absorbing the words carefully. "The princess must save her people," Nana Ampabeng said firmly. "The kingdom suffers under the cruelty of Nana Entim. Only she can restore balance." Atinga slowly nodded. "I will train her." The priest looked satisfied. "Then begin." Soon after, Atinga arrived in the village. When Susuka saw the giant warrior, she stood quietly. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Atinga bowed deeply. "My princess, forgive me." Susuka gently shook her head. "You protected me the best you could." But Atinga's voice remained firm. "The time has come for you to become more than a princess." He looked directly into her eyes. "You must become a warrior." Susuka did not hesitate. "Teach me." That very night, Nana Ampabeng gave her the sacred herbal mixture. The bitter liquid burned her throat as she swallowed it. Moments later, her body felt strangely warm. It was as if the spirits of the land had entered her blood. The next morning, her training began, and it was unlike anything the village had ever seen. The first powerful training was called the Blind Warrior Path. Atinga blindfolded her with thick cloth. "Your eyes can lie," he told her, "but your spirit cannot." At first, Susuka struggled. She swung her sword clumsily, but Atinga kept attacking her with a wooden staff. "Listen!" he shouted. "Feel the wind. Hear my steps." Slowly, she began to sense movement through sound and air. Days turned into weeks. Soon, Susuka could defend herself while completely blindfolded. One day during training, something shocking happened. Atinga attacked her from behind with lightning speed, but Susuka spun instantly and placed her blade against his chest before he could strike. Atinga froze, for the first time in many years. Someone had outmaneuvered him. The second powerful training was called the River of Strength. Atinga made her stand inside a fast-moving river. The water crashed against her legs. "Balance your body," he commanded. Then he attacked her with a staff while the river pushed against her. If she lost balance, she would fall. At first, she fell many times, but slowly her legs grew stronger. Her movements became faster and steadier. Soon she could fight while standing firmly in the rushing water. Even Atinga smiled with surprise. The third powerful training was the most difficult. It was called the Night of Silent Arrows. Atinga trained her in archery, but not during the day, only at night. The forest was completely dark. She had to listen carefully to the sounds around her: an owl moving, a leaf falling, the movement of a target. Then she would release the arrow. Her arrows began hitting targets again and again, but 2 moments shocked even Atinga. One night, a wild deer suddenly ran across the training ground. Without hesitation, Susuka released an arrow into the darkness. The arrow flew through the trees and struck a small hanging fruit nearly 50 steps away. Atinga stared in disbelief. Another day, Atinga secretly placed 5 clay pots across the forest clearing. He did not tell her where they were. Susuka closed her eyes, listening carefully. Then she released 5 arrows, one after another. All 5 arrows shattered the hidden pots. Atinga slowly lowered his head in amazement. "The gods truly walk with you," he said. Months passed. The weak princess who had once been locked in chains was gone. In her place stood a warrior. Her movements were fast. Her mind was sharp. Her spirit burned with purpose. And deep inside her heart, one promise had grown stronger every day. She would return. She would free her people, and the kingdom would rise again. But far away in the kingdom, rumors had begun to spread. Travelers whispered strange stories in the markets. Hunters spoke about a mysterious warrior woman in the forest who could strike targets in darkness. Villagers said they had seen a tall northern warrior training someone with the strength of 10 men. At first, these stories sounded like myths, but one man listened carefully. Ananse, the rebel ruler who had taken the throne. Inside the royal hall, his advisors gathered before him. A frightened messenger knelt on the floor. "My king," the messenger said nervously, "the rumors are spreading across the villages." Ananse leaned forward slowly. "What rumors?" The messenger swallowed. "They say the princess lives." The hall fell silent. "They say she trains with a powerful warrior in the forest." Ananse's eyes darkened. "And this warrior?" "A giant man," the messenger continued, "from the northern lands." The rebel king slammed his fist against the arm of his chair. "Atinga!" The name echoed through the hall. So the warrior had survived. For a moment, Ananse sat quietly, thinking. Then he stood. "If the people see her alive," he said slowly, "they will begin to hope again." He turned toward his commanders. "That cannot happen." His voice became cold. "Send warriors." One commander asked carefully, "How many, my king?" Ananse's answer was simple. "Enough to end this forever." Within hours, more than 300 warriors gathered outside the palace. They were the strongest fighters in the kingdom. Some carried long spears, others carried heavy shields and curved swords. Many had spiritual charms tied around their bodies for protection. Their mission was clear: find Susuka, capture her, or kill her. Days later, deep in the forest training ground, Susuka was practicing archery when Atinga suddenly raised his hand. "Stop!" She lowered her bow. "What is it?" Atinga's eyes scanned the forest carefully. The wind carried a distant sound, many footsteps. Heavy footsteps. The giant warrior's voice became serious. "They have found us!" Moments later, the forest trees began to move. Warriors appeared from every direction, spears pointed forward, swords ready. More and more soldiers surrounded the clearing. Soon the number of enemy warriors filled the entire forest edge. Over 300 men. One commander stepped forward. His voice echoed across the clearing. "Princess Susuka, you are ordered to surrender. Come peacefully and your life may be spared." Susuka stepped forward calmly. Her eyes showed no fear. "Tell Ananse something for me," she said firmly. "I am no longer his prisoner." The commander frowned. "Then you choose death." He raised his hand. "Attack!" The warriors charged. The forest exploded with noise. Atinga roared like thunder. He rushed forward with his sword swinging through the air. The first warrior barely lifted his shield before Atinga's blade smashed it apart. The man fell instantly. 2 more soldiers attacked from the side. Atinga spun like a storm, knocking both of them to the ground with terrifying force. Meanwhile, Susuka moved like lightning. Her sword flashed through the sunlight, breaking between the trees. One warrior rushed her with a spear. She stepped aside gracefully and struck him with the side of her arm. The impact lifted the man off his feet. Another soldier tried to grab her from behind. But Susuka turned suddenly. With unbelievable strength, she grabbed 2 warriors at once, lifting them by their armor. The surrounding soldiers froze in shock. The princess spun and threw both men through the air. Their bodies flew across the forest like broken branches. They crashed nearly 120 meters away, smashing through bushes and trees. The warriors around her stared in disbelief. "Impossible," one of them whispered. But the battle had only begun. Susuka moved forward like a force of nature. Every strike of her sword was precise and deadly. Every movement carried the power of the gods. One warrior attacked her with a heavy axe. She caught his wrist, twisted his arm, and slammed him into the ground with enough force to shake the earth. Another soldier ran toward her. She jumped high into the air, kicking him in the chest. The man flew backward like a leaf in the wind. Even Atinga paused for a moment, watching her fight. Pride filled his eyes. The princess he once protected had become a warrior stronger than anyone could imagine. Meanwhile, Atinga continued his own brutal battle. He swung his sword with unstoppable force. His blade shattered shields. His punches sent men flying. At one moment, 5 warriors rushed him together. Atinga roared and charged straight into them. The clash sounded like thunder. 2 men fell instantly. The others scattered in fear. The battlefield had turned into chaos. The 300 warriors who had come confidently now realized something terrifying. They were not fighting a frightened princess. They were fighting a force chosen by the gods. And standing beside her was the most powerful warrior the kingdom had ever known. The forest echoed with the sounds of battle as Susuka and Atinga stood back to back, surrounded by fallen enemies. But the remaining warriors were still many, and the battle for the kingdom had only just begun. The forest battle had ended in a way no one in the kingdom had ever imagined. The 300 warriors who had marched proudly into the wilderness believing they would capture a weak princess had instead faced something terrifying. Many had fallen, others had fled in fear. Only a few wounded men survived. Their bodies were bruised, their armor broken, their spirits shattered. For days they dragged themselves through the forest, struggling to reach the kingdom. Some walked with broken legs supported by branches. Others leaned on their comrades, bleeding and exhausted. When they finally reached the palace gates, the guards barely recognized them. Inside the royal hall, Ananse sat on the throne he had taken by force. The wounded soldiers were dragged before him. "What happened?" he demanded. The commander who had led the expedition struggled to kneel. "My king, we found them." Ananse leaned forward. "And?" The commander's voice trembled. "She is no longer the girl we imprisoned." A dark silence filled the hall. "She fights like a spirit sent by the gods." Another wounded soldier spoke through pain. "We sent 300 men." His voice shook. "Most of them will never return." The hall exploded with murmurs. Ananse's face slowly hardened. "And Atinga?" The soldier lowered his head. "He fights like 10 men." The rebel king clenched his fists. For the first time since he had taken the throne, a shadow of fear crossed his mind. But far away in the wilderness, Susuka and Atinga were preparing for the next step. By this time, Susuka had mastered many skills. But there was one final training Atinga insisted she learn: horse riding. For weeks, she trained relentlessly. At first, the powerful horses struggled to obey her commands, but soon Susuka rode them with perfect control. She could stand on the horse while riding. She could shoot arrows while galloping. She could guide the horse using only her legs. One morning, Atinga looked at her and nodded. "You are ready." The time had come. They saddled 2 strong horses. Before leaving, Susuka stood quietly facing the direction of the kingdom. "My father," she whispered softly. "Watch me." Then they rode. The journey back took nearly a month. They traveled through forests, rivers, and distant villages. Along the way, Susuka saw the suffering of the people under Ananse's rule. Hungry children, abandoned farms, villagers too afraid to speak openly. Each sight strengthened her resolve. Finally, one evening, they reached the outskirts of the kingdom. Smoke rose from the city, but the markets were quiet. Fear still ruled the land. Susuka turned to Atinga. "The first thing we take back is what belongs to the people." Atinga nodded. They rode straight toward the largest royal warehouse, the place where Nana Entim had stored food and goods taken from poor farmers through heavy taxes. The building was heavily guarded. Dozens of soldiers stood watch. As Susuka and Atinga approached, the guards immediately raised their weapons. "Halt!" But before they could attack, Susuka drew her bow. Her movements were smooth and fast. She pulled back the string. But something extraordinary happened. Instead of one arrow, she placed 5 arrows across the bow. Atinga looked at her with quiet confidence. The guards laughed. "You think one bow can stop us?" Susuka released the string. The arrows flew like lightning. 5 warriors collapsed instantly. Each arrow had struck its target. 5 men fell at the same moment. The remaining guards froze in shock. But Atinga had already drawn his bow. He released another set of arrows. More soldiers fell. Soon the guards were scattered across the ground. The remaining few fled in terror. Susuka walked toward the massive wooden doors of the warehouse. With a powerful strike of her sword, she broke the lock. The doors opened slowly. Inside were mountains of food, grain, salt, oil, cloth, everything that had been stolen from the farmers. Susuka stepped outside and raised her voice. "People of the kingdom," her voice echoed through the streets, "this belongs to you." At first, no one moved. Then, a hungry woman slowly stepped forward. Behind her came more villagers. Soon, hundreds of people gathered. Susuka smiled gently. "Take what is yours." The people rushed inside. Mothers filled baskets with food. Old men carried sacks of grain. Children laughed as they held bread for the first time in weeks. Tears filled many eyes, but the moment of joy was suddenly interrupted. From the far end of the road, the sound of marching soldiers echoed. More than 100 warriors approached quickly. They had been sent to stop the rebellion. Their commander shouted, "Seize them!" Susuka and Atinga stepped forward. They stood side by side once again. Susuka lifted her bow. 5 arrows rested against the string. The soldiers rushed forward. The bowstring snapped. 5 warriors fell instantly. Atinga charged into the battle with his sword. The clash of steel filled the air. Susuka moved like lightning. Her arrows flew again and again. Each shot found its target. Within minutes, the battlefield was filled with fallen soldiers. The remaining warriors dropped their weapons and fled. The villagers stared in disbelief. The princess they thought had been lost forever now stood before them like a living legend. Susuka turned slowly toward the palace in the distance. The throne that belonged to her father still waited, and now the entire kingdom had begun to awaken. But the final confrontation with Nana Entim was still coming, and that battle would decide the future of the kingdom forever. The news of the warehouse battle spread across the kingdom like wildfire. For years the people had lived in fear under the harsh rule of Nana Entim. Farmers had watched their harvests taken away. Traders had been beaten for refusing to pay cruel taxes. Families had seen their fathers and sons imprisoned for questioning the king. But now something new had appeared. Hope. The villagers began whispering the same name everywhere. Susuka has returned. The princess lives. They say she fights like the gods themselves. Stories of her strength traveled from village to village. Some said she could strike 5 enemies with a single arrow. Others swore they saw her lift 2 warriors and throw them like pieces of wood. At first, the people did not know if the stories were true, but those who had seen the warehouse battle spoke with certainty. She freed the food for the hungry. She fights for the people. She is the only hope left. Soon men began arriving quietly at the forest camp where Atinga and Susuka had settled. Some were farmers, some were hunters, some were former soldiers who had abandoned Nana Entim's cruel army. They came not for wealth, They came for freedom. One evening, a group of young men stood before Susuka. "We want to fight for you," their leader said. Susuka looked at them carefully. "Fighting is not glory," she replied. "It brings pain and death." But the young man did not hesitate. "We already live in pain." Atinga stepped beside her and nodded slowly. "They speak truth." And so the resistance began to grow. Day after day, more people joined them. Within weeks, the camp had become a small army. Atinga trained them with ruthless discipline. Every morning they practiced sword fighting. Every afternoon they learned archery. At night they studied strategy around large fires. Susuka also trained with them. Her skill amazed the new recruits. She could strike distant targets while riding a horse at full speed. She could defeat 3 warriors at once with her sword. She could hear approaching enemies before anyone else noticed. Soon, the resistance army became stronger. 6 months passed. During that time, Ananse made several attempts to destroy them. He sent assassins. He sent small attack groups. He even tried to poison nearby villages that supported the rebellion. But every attempt failed. Atinga's discipline and Susuka's growing strength protected the resistance. Finally, the day came when Susuka decided the war must end. She gathered her fighters beneath a large tree. "The kingdom suffers while we hide," she said. "It is time to take back what belongs to the people." The resistance warriors raised their weapons in agreement. The campaign began. Villages quickly opened their gates to Susuka's army. Many people even joined her along the way. By the time they reached the plains outside the capital, the resistance army had grown large and determined. Ananse also gathered his forces. His army was still bigger. Thousands of warriors lined the battlefield. The morning sun rose slowly over the open field. 2 armies stood facing each other. Then the war trumpets sounded. Boom! Boom! The battlefield exploded with movement. Warriors charged forward. Spears clashed. Swords rang loudly. Arrows filled the sky. At the center of the resistance army rode Princess Susuka. Her horse moved like lightning across the battlefield. Her sword flashed again and again. Every movement shocked those who saw it. At one moment, 5 enemy warriors rushed her at once. Susuka spun through them like a storm. Within seconds, all 5 were on the ground. At another moment, she rode straight toward a group of archers. Before they could release their arrows, she fired 5 arrows from a single bow draw. 5 archers fell instantly. Even the experienced soldiers of Ananse began whispering, "She cannot be human." Ananse himself watched the battle from his position. He wore powerful spiritual amulets across his chest and arms. The charms gave him unnatural strength. But even he looked surprised. The resistance fighters were pushing his army back. Susuka's movements were too fast. Her strikes were too precise. Many of Ananse's warriors fell before they could even approach her. But as the battle continued, Susuka began to notice something painful. The men she was fighting were still her own people. Farmers, hunters, men forced to serve the tyrant king. Hundreds were already dead. Thousands more could die before the battle ended. She suddenly raised her sword high and shouted loudly, "Stop!" Her voice carried across the battlefield. Both armies paused in confusion. Susuka rode forward between the 2 sides. She pointed her sword toward Ananse. "If you truly believe you deserve the throne," she shouted, "then prove it." The entire battlefield listened. "Let us fight," she continued, "you and me. If you are powerful, bet your life on this war. If I lose, the kingdom is yours. If you lose, the people are free." Ananse stared at her for a moment. Then he laughed loudly. "This is a fight to death," he said. "No one should spare anyone." He stepped forward confidently. His spiritual charms glowed faintly as he moved. The battlefield cleared. Both armies watched silently. The duel began. Their swords clashed like thunder. Sparks flew as metal struck metal. Nana Entim was powerful. His spiritual amulets strengthened his body. He struck with great force. Several times, Susuka barely avoided his deadly blows. But Susuka moved with the speed and grace taught by Atinga. She blocked. She turned. She struck back. The duel continued for nearly 2 hours. Both warriors grew tired, but neither stopped. Finally, Susuka noticed something important. One of Nana Entim's most powerful amulets hung from a leather cord across his chest. It pulsed with strange energy. She waited carefully for the right moment. Then Nana Entim attacked with a powerful downward strike. Susuka stepped aside quickly. Her sword flashed across his chest. The blade cut through the cord holding the amulet. The charm fell to the ground. Immediately, Nana Entim staggered. The spiritual strength that protected him suddenly faded. Fear filled his eyes. No. Susuka raised her sword one final time. For the kingdom! Her blade struck swiftly. Nana Entim fell to the ground. Silence spread across the battlefield. The tyrant king was dead. Slowly, the warriors of both armies lowered their weapons. The long suffering of the kingdom had finally ended. And Princess Susuka stood victorious, the chosen ruler of the land. But the journey of rebuilding the broken kingdom was only just beginning. For years they had watched their farms destroyed, their food stolen, their brothers imprisoned, and their voices silenced. But now the tyrant who caused their suffering lay defeated on the ground. At the center of the battlefield stood Princess Susuka. Her sword was still in her hand. Her breathing was heavy after the long duel that lasted more than 2 hours. Blood and dust covered her armor, but her eyes were calm. Atinga slowly walked toward her from the resistance army. The giant warrior looked at her with deep pride. "You have done what the gods destined," he said quietly. Around them, warriors from Nana Entim's army began dropping their weapons one by one. Many of them knelt before Susuka. Some lowered their heads in shame. Others wept with relief. They had not wanted to fight their own people. They had only followed the orders of a cruel ruler. Susuka looked at them and raised her hand. "No more fighting," she said. Her voice was strong but gentle. "We are one kingdom again." The words spread through the crowd. Soon the battlefield echoed with a single voice. "Susuka! Susuka! Susuka!" The people had found their leader. Days later, the entire kingdom gathered in the capital. The royal courtyard, which had once witnessed betrayal and chaos, was now filled with hope again. Elders, chiefs, warriors, farmers, traders and families stood together. At the center of the gathering stood Nana Ampaabeng, the wise fetish priest who had first delivered the message of the gods. He raised his sacred staff toward the sky. "The gods have spoken long ago," he said, "and today their words are fulfilled." He turned toward Susuka. "The throne belongs to the one chosen to protect the people." The elders of the kingdom brought forward the sacred royal stool. Traditionally, only men had sat on that throne. But this moment was different. This moment changed history. Susuka stepped forward slowly. The crowd held its breath. She sat on the stool of the ancestors. And for the first time in the kingdom's history, a woman became king. Not queen, but king. Because the throne did not belong to a gender. It belonged to the one who could carry the responsibility. The crowd erupted with joy. Drums began to beat again. Women danced with excitement. Men raised their weapons in celebration. The kingdom had hope again. Under King Susuka's rule, many things began to change. The heavy taxes were removed. The stolen food was returned to the farmers. Prisoners who had been unjustly jailed were released. The markets came alive again. Children laughed in the streets, and slowly the wounds of the kingdom began to heal. But perhaps the greatest change was something deeper. People began to understand a powerful truth. Leadership is not about whether someone is a man or a woman. Leadership is about strength, wisdom, courage, and heart. If someone is capable, they must be allowed to lead. This story carries a powerful lesson for everyone listening today. Many times in life, people will try to limit you. They will say, "You are too young. You are too weak. You are not the right person. You cannot succeed." Princess Susuka heard the same words. People said a woman could never rule. People said she was too young. People said she would fail. But she refused to believe those voices. Instead, she trained harder. She grew stronger. She believed in her destiny. And when the moment came, she proved everyone wrong. So if anyone ever tells you that you cannot make it, remember Susuka. Stand tall, work hard, believe in your strength, and tell them clearly, "I am capable. I will succeed. I will rise stronger." The crown always belongs to the person who is strong enough to carry it. And like the saying goes, if the cap fits, let the person wear it. Now, dear listeners, if you enjoyed this powerful story of courage, destiny, and hope, support the channel. Subscribe to Ananse Web of Tales so you never miss the next story. Like this video so more people can discover these powerful African stories. Leave a comment and tell us where you are watching from. And share this story with your friends and family so the message of courage can reach many hearts. Before we end, let us say a short prayer together. May the strength that guided Susuka guide you in your life. May every battle you face turn into victory. May every door that seems closed open for you. May courage fill your heart and wisdom guide your path. If you believe and receive this blessing, type Amen in the comments, and may success follow you wherever you go. Amen.